And it looked like ESPN just told the shocking truth as to why Sandy Brondello was let go by the New York Liberty. Guys, for this one here,
everyone thinks they know the story of Sandy Brondello's sudden firing from the Liberty. But what actually went down is so much wilder. A brutal truth ESPN just uncovered that exposes a toxic front office, a championship betrayal, and a league-wide power play that will shock you to your core. This isn't just about a coach, it's about the future of the WNBA itself.
The New York Liberty have let go Sandy Brondello. Well, in their terms, they will not renew her contract. In our eyes, they parted ways. She was fired, essentially. But not as bad as being fired, I guess. But that's just how we talk out here. Nonetheless, I'm shocked. She's been a coach there for 4 seasons. You look at the past 3 seasons, she made it to the finals in her 2nd season. She won the finals in her 3rd season, and they lost in round 1 this year. Outside looking in, you look at this franchise and you see that's a successful franchise. New York is a powerhouse in the W right now. So what is the issue? What is the front office looking at? What are the ownership?
ESPN dropped the bombshell. Sandy Brondello, the Liberty's winningest coach, fresh off a championship, unceremoniously shown the door. Fans rubbed their eyes in disbelief. A coach who delivered a title, then immediately tossed aside? This isn't a dream. It's the ruthless reality of a WNBA front office flexing ego over logic, trying to act bigger than the league. Let's peel back the layers of exactly what ESPN revealed, because this goes far beyond basketball. It's about politics, unbelievable pressure, and a franchise's shocking self-sabotage.
Winning the title, what exactly led to the parting of ways between the Liberty and Sandy Brondello here?
Well, Malika, I know you guys talk about this a lot in the NBA and in other sports, but it was really championship or bust for New York and for Sandy Brondello. And in fact, if they hadn't won the championship last year, we might have been having this conversation a year ago, which is maybe a little startling to fans outside, given how, excuse me for those noises, for how impactful she'd been for that franchise. But that is how bullish this organization is in New York, and how their ownership and management really are looking to just continue upon that success.
Here's where it gets truly insane. This firing wasn't some knee-jerk reaction to a bad playoff run. According to ESPN, it was brewing for a while. Sandy Brondello could have been out last year if she hadn't won the title. Championship or bust, literally. How does that even make sense? You hire a coach, she rebuilds your franchise, leads you to more wins than any Liberty coach in history, delivers a championship, and your thank you gift is a pink slip? That's like eating a 5-star meal then sending it back because the plate wasn't warm enough. It defies all logic, and ESPN pretty much confirmed it.
To have. And so I think for New York moving forward, I would expect them to really, again, be bullish in who they go after. We know that they are a WNBA franchise that invests a lot in a lot of resources, a lot of financial capital into these decisions. So I think it wouldn't be shocking, though, if they decide to go after maybe someone in the NBA, someone that we might be a little bit more of a non-traditional hire. I do think Sandy Brondello has a great shot of getting hired again. We know what she has done in this league. We know that there's openings in Seattle, for example, in addition to the 2.
The Liberty front office, described as bullish, translates to Wall Street owners who think sports work like stock portfolios. If the numbers aren't perfect, dump the asset, buy a new one. They aren't interested in the long game. They want dominance, non-stop. And if you can't deliver it on command, they'll find someone they think can. This is the part that will blow your mind. Brondello wasn't just winning. She was overcoming major issues outside her control. Playoff injuries, players not fully healthy, a roster lacking depth, yet she coached them to the finals and won the whole thing.
Sat down with ESPN to give us an update as to why Sandy Brondello will let go. And what's crazy about all of this in this interview that I'm about to show you guys is that Sandy Brondello was supposed to be fired last year, but she actually won the WNBA championship.
But here's where it gets really crazy. Management somehow twisted that into a negative. ESPN's insider Alexa Filippo reported that the decision was made before the playoffs. It was title or else. Meaning if New York didn't win back-to-back championships, Sandy was gone. Let that sink in. She delivered their first championship in franchise history, only to be judged on whether she could repeat it immediately. The bar was raised so unrealistically high that the only logical outcome was failure. Other franchises are begging for a coach with her resume, yet New York looked at it and shrugged.
New York Liberty just fired their head coach. People are confused as to why, because they won the championship last year. They made the playoffs this year. In sports, there's always a scapegoat when things aren't going the way that they wanted it to go. Clearly, in New York, the standard has been raised. As Coach Tibbs learned with the New York Knicks, making the playoffs does not guarantee that you are safe anymore. They have raised the standard. They're sending a message to the fans, to the team, saying, we don't want to just go to the playoffs. We need to go to the finals and we need to win. So if it's not the players on the court that are changing, it's got to be the coaching staff. So unfortunately, that did mean Coach Sandy.
The timing, brutal. ESPN made it clear this wasn't some long goodbye. The Liberty announced it quickly, dropped a bland "thanks for your service" statement, and immediately started talking about replacements. No celebration, no parade. Just a cold, "we wish her the best." This hits deeper than just one coach. It exposes the WNBA's weird obsession with chasing NBA-style headlines without having the same infrastructure. The Liberty act like the Lakers firing a coach after failing to three-peat. Newsflash, you're not. You're in a league still fighting for market share. You need stability, not chaos.
Yeah, you never want to see a player get injured, and a player like Caitlin and coming back has had a few injuries this year. She's a great player. It would have been good for our crowd to see her, but hopefully they get to see her after post All-Star. We get to play them again. As for the All-Star, I'm excited to get to know her a little bit. I think that's the part of the All-Star is going to coach players that you haven't coached before and get them to know them a little bit and enjoy the whole celebration.
And speaking of chaos, let's not ignore how this connects to Caitlin Clark. Caitlin has already shifted the power balance in the WNBA. She's the face of the league, and everything she does gets magnified. When someone like Sandy Brondello praises her, or even acknowledges her impact, it makes the old guard uncomfortable. The politics of who gets credit suddenly matter more than wins. This is what ESPN hinted at but didn't say outright. Brondello's openness about praising Caitlin and acknowledging her effect on the league rubs certain people the wrong way. The Liberty want their stars, Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, to be the uncontested faces of the team, and maybe the league. Having a coach recognize Caitlin's cultural impact doesn't exactly fit the "we're the center of the universe" brand the Liberty have been selling. And this is where it gets spicy. Breanna Stewart only signed a one-year deal. Imagine this. The Liberty fire their championship coach to prove some strange point, and in the process, they alienate the star who brought them credibility. ESPN even floated the idea that Stewart could jump ship, and if that happens, New York goes from powerhouse to rebuild overnight. That's the insane gamble they're taking. Meanwhile, players across the league are speaking out. Becky Hammon flat out said she didn't like the move. That matters. When one of the most respected coaches in the game calls your decision trash without saying trash, you should probably rethink your life choices. But the Liberty aren't listening. They're too busy pretending to be chess masters while actually just flipping the board. And then there's the bigger question. Who replaces Sandy? ESPN suggested the Liberty might even look outside the WNBA, maybe an NBA assistant. Nothing says stability like handing a loaded veteran roster to a coach who has never managed a WNBA locker room. That's reckless. The irony in all this is that Sandy Brondello will almost certainly land on her feet. Seattle has an opening. Expansion franchises are looking. She's too respected to stay unemployed for long. So the Liberty aren't just losing a coach, they're handing one of their rivals a championship-caliber leader. Imagine Sandy turning around and coaching Seattle to a title. That would be the ultimate revenge tour, and ESPN would have a field day with it. Let's rewind for a second to the Liberty's own record under Brondello. ESPN laid out the numbers. In 2022, they went 16-20, a rebuild. In 2023, they exploded to 32-8 and made the finals. In 2024, they went 32-8 again and won the title. And in 2025, they lost in the first round with a 27-17 record mainly due to injuries. That resume gets you fired? Come on. Coaches with half that success get contract extensions and statues. This is why fans are furious. The firing doesn't make basketball sense. It only makes sense if you assume the Liberty's front office cares more about optics than wins. They want to be the glamour franchise, the face of the WNBA, the team that flexes its resources. But instead of building on stability, they've introduced chaos. And chaos is rarely a winning strategy. Think about the message this sends to the locker room. Players are supposed to trust management, buy into the system, believe that hard work gets rewarded. Instead, they're watching their coach, the one who helped them break barriers, tossed aside like yesterday's headline. That's demoralizing. And if you think athletes don't care about stuff like this, you're wrong. These are pros. They know when the front office is playing games. And let's not forget the fans. ESPN's coverage showed how shocked people were. Social media blew up with Liberty fans calling it betrayal, nonsense, even sabotage. Some said they won't support the team until ownership changes. That's how badly this has backfired. The Liberty thought they were making a bold move. Instead, they just alienated their base. This isn't just about Sandy Brondello. This is about how the WNBA handles success. Too often, the league undercuts itself. Instead of celebrating growth and stability, it chases drama. Instead of letting stars coexist, it forces rivalries. And instead of building long-term, it goes for quick fixes. That's why this firing feels bigger than one franchise. It's a warning sign, and that's exactly why ESPN's report hits so hard. Because it exposed the truth. Sandy wasn't fired because she failed. She was fired because the Liberty front office wanted perfection, control, and a spotlight that never dims. And in chasing that spotlight, they might have just dimmed their own future. So here's where things get even more telling. ESPN didn't just frame this as a coach gets fired story. They framed it as a franchise identity crisis. The Liberty are torn between two worlds. On one side, the steady grind that Sandy Brondello built, and on the other side, the flashy, impatient vision of ownership that wants to dominate headlines like an NBA super team. That clash finally boiled over, and Brondello ended up paying the price. The irony here, her players backed her. Breanna Stewart, after their playoff exit, publicly said they had Sandy's back. That wasn't lip service. That was a superstar making it clear the locker room still believed in their coach, yet management ignored it. And if you're a player like Stewart, who only signed a one-year deal, what does that say? It screams that your voice doesn't matter. You wanted stability. They chose chaos. That opens the door wide for her to consider walking away. And let's not act like the league isn't watching this. Coaches and players across the WNBA see what just happened. They see a coach who delivered success beyond expectations, dumped because she didn't match an unrealistic perfectionist vision. That sends a message. Loyalty means nothing. Winning isn't enough. And if you think that doesn't weigh on free agents, think again. Why would a top player trust New York when they know management will flip the script at the first sign of trouble? ESPN also pointed out something bigger. This wasn't just about losing in the playoffs. It was about power. The Liberty's ownership group has poured money into branding, marketing, and facilities. They want to be the crown jewel of the WNBA. But with that money comes ego. They don't want a coach who gets credit for building the system. They want to take the credit themselves. And Sandy's success threatened that narrative. That's why some insiders are already speculating that her replacement could be an NBA assistant. Not because it's the smart basketball move, but because it looks bold. It makes headlines. It fits the New York swagger identity. But here's the problem. Players don't care about bold hires. They care about trust, consistency, and whether a coach can get them through the grind of a season. Brondello already proved she could. Whoever comes next is walking into a minefield. And don't forget, expansion is coming. Seattle's got an opening. 2 new teams will need coaches. ESPN was clear. Sandy Brondello will have offers. And here's where it gets fun. If she takes one of those jobs and wins, the Liberty become the clowns of the league. Imagine New York firing her just to watch her build another contender somewhere else. That's the kind of poetic justice sports fans live for. But the biggest takeaway, and what ESPN really hammered home, is this. The Liberty just made themselves the story for all the wrong reasons. Instead of celebrating a dynasty run, they're facing questions about dysfunction, overreach, and whether they even understand what winning culture looks like. Fans aren't fooled. Players aren't fooled. And if the front office thinks they're going to spin this as some bold vision, they're dead wrong. The WNBA is in a crucial moment. Caitlin Clark is in her second year, dragging viewership numbers to historic highs. Other young stars are emerging. The league has momentum it hasn't had in decades. The last thing it needs is one of its premier franchises showing the world how not to treat success. Yet that's exactly what New York just did. They didn't fire Sandy Brondello because she was bad. They fired her because she wasn't controllable enough. And ESPN exposed every bit of that ugly truth. So where does that leave us? With a league that just watched its so-called model franchise implode over ego. With a coach who deserved better, already being courted elsewhere. And with fans wondering if the Liberty just sabotaged their own future for the sake of appearances. ESPN's report exposed what really went down. And the Liberty now look more fragile than ever. Sandy Brondello delivered history and still got tossed aside. Fans deserve better than boardroom politics pretending to be basketball decisions.